You know, I still look at that text message sometimes, the one my dad sent me, and I can't believe it's real. It's just 5 words, so incredibly cold and devoid of any human emotion, that it still sends a chill down my spine. It simply read, "I disown you. Talk to my lawyer." That was it. No warning, no context, just a clinical, brutal dismissal from the man who was supposed to be my father, the man I had been financially supporting for years. I remember staring at my phone, the screen burning brightly in the quiet of my office, and a single, crystal, clear thought cut through the initial shock and pain. Fine. You want to play this game, you clearly don't need me. Then I'm done, and I was. Within the hour, I made a series of calculated decisions that, 48 hours later, would lead to my mother calling me in absolute, frantic panic. The whole thing blew up in their faces spectacularly, and sometimes I wonder, was I wrong for what I did? Was my response, which was immediate, brutal, and utterly final, an overreaction, or was it the only sane, justified move I could make after years of being treated like an ATM with legs? Tell me honestly if you would have done the same thing. To really understand why I acted the way I did, we have to go back to the beginning, back to a childhood that, on the surface, looked picture perfect, but was always built on a very shaky foundation of conditional love and expectations. I'm the only child of 2 very successful, but utterly self-absorbed professionals. My dad, a high-powered executive, and my mom, a successful interior designer. Growing up, our home was immaculate, our vacations were exotic, and my education was the absolute best money could buy. But there was a constant, unspoken pressure. My parents didn't value effort, they only valued results. Anything less than an A was a disappointment, not a chance to do better. My worth, in their eyes, was directly proportional to my accomplishments. When I got into a top-tier university, they were ecstatic. When I landed my first 6-figure job right out of school, they introduced me to all their friends with a smug proprietary pride. I wasn't their daughter. I was their greatest investment, finally yielding a substantial return. My parents lived a life of luxury, well beyond their actual means, believing their high income would always sustain them. They had the biggest house, the newest cars, and a lifestyle that required a constant stream of high-end spending. They never saved, never planned for retirement, always convinced that the next big deal was just around the corner. That complacency was their first major downfall. About 10 years ago, when I was finally established in my career and starting to build my own life, the global financial crisis hit their industries hard. My dad's company downsized, and he was let go with a decent severance, but nothing to sustain his spending habits. My mom's design business dried up as clients postponed luxury renovations. They went from being the high-flying couple to being financially vulnerable almost overnight. And who did they turn to? Me, of course. It started subtly. A casual request for a short-term loan to cover a property tax bill. Then, help with a medical deductible. The loans were never repaid, and the requests became more frequent and less apologetic. Soon, I was covering their monthly mortgage payment. It escalated to paying off their credit cards, which they would invariably max out again within a few months. The requests were never framed as desperate. They were always presented as a temporary inconvenience that a loving, successful daughter should be happy to handle. It's just until my next big project closes, my mom would say, or the market is stabilizing, your father will be back on his feet soon. But the temporary solution became a permanent arrangement. For the last 5 years, I have been, for all intents and purposes, their primary source of income. I paid their mortgage, their utilities, their car payments, and even gave them a substantial monthly allowance for groceries and day-to-day expenses. I did this not because I felt they deserved it. Their self-pity and entitlement were honestly exhausting, but because they were still my parents, and I couldn't stand the thought of them losing house or going without basic necessities, despite their own colossal financial irresponsibility. This level of support was not easy for me. I'm a high earner, yes, but I also have my own life. I'm saving for my own future, trying to pay off my own student debt, and dreaming of buying a house. Every month, a huge chunk of my salary, we're talking nearly 40% of my net income, was automatically diverted to their expenses. It was a crippling burden, and it was made worse by their utter lack of gratitude. They never thanked me. In fact, they would often complain if the money wasn't deposited early enough, or if I dared to suggest they cut back on discretionary spending, like their expensive golf club membership, which I was also paying for, mind you. My existence had essentially been reduced to my bank account. They'd call, but it was never to ask how I was doing. It was always to ask for more. The pressure cooker really started to build a head of steam 6 months ago. I had started a new, high-demand project at work, and the stress was immense. I told them I needed to temporarily reduce the monthly allowance for a few months to save up for a necessary, expensive repair on my own car, which I needed for my job. I proposed a 20% reduction for 3 months, explaining it was vital for my own financial stability. The reaction was not understanding, it was outrage. My dad actually scoffed at me over the phone and said, "Is that all your successful job is paying you? Can't you work harder? Your mother and I need that money to maintain a respectable appearance in our community. You're being selfish, considering everything we did for you." That line, "everything we did for you," was their weapon of choice, the one they'd always used to justify their demands and negate any boundary I tried to set. The conversation ended with him hanging up on me, and I felt a shift, a cold realization that their entitlement had completely eclipsed any genuine affection they might have had for me. The final straw, the tiny little tremor that preceded the financial earthquake, happened 2 weeks ago. My cousin, my aunt's daughter, got into a prestigious private art school across the country. My aunt and uncle, who are wonderful, down-to-earth people, threw her a small, celebratory dinner. I went and it was lovely. The next day, my mom called me, not to chat, but to demand to know why I hadn't offered to pay my cousin's tuition. She actually said, "It's a great opportunity, and you have the means. It would reflect well on the family if you sponsored her. What's wrong with you not offering to pay?" I was floored. I explained, very calmly, that I was barely keeping their lifestyle afloat, and that I was not responsible for funding my cousin's art education, no matter how much I loved her. My mom became hysterical, calling me selfish and saying I was clearly prioritizing money over family. She claimed I was hoarding my wealth and that any good daughter would share her success. This conversation left a bitter taste in my mouth, but it wasn't over. Evidently, my mom must have gone straight to my dad and twisted the story, framing me as this terrible, stingy daughter who was refusing to help the family. I guess they concocted a plan, a final desperate power play to try and arm me into permanently increasing my payments to them, perhaps even paying for my cousin's tuition, or maybe they just wanted to cement their control over me. They probably thought the threat of disowning me, of removing what little emotional connection we had left, would make me panic and capitulate instantly, showering them with even more money to regain their approval. They completely misjudged me and the situation. They saw a meek, dutiful daughter. They missed the exhausted, financially strained, and utterly resentful woman I had become. So that's the situation I was in. Years of financial support, zero gratitude, constant complaints, and now they were escalating things to a level of cold, calculated emotional blackmail. My phone pinged at 9:15 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, right as I was about to head into a major client meeting. I saw the preview. "I disown you. Talk to my lawyer." I opened the text, read the full message, and felt all the years of frustration, resentment, and financial burden crystallize into a single, unbreakable resolve. They were essentially serving me with a notice that they were voluntarily and officially cutting me out of their lives, and therefore cutting me out of their financial obligation to me. The implied message was, "You are now our enemy, and we no longer consider you family." I had to make a choice. Do I panic and beg for forgiveness, reaffirming their financial control over me? Or do I take their statement at face value and finally free myself from this crushing weight? Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have fought to maintain the relationship and the payments, or would you have walked away? I'm genuinely curious about your thoughts on this level of manipulation. I finished reading the text, and I knew what I had to do. I canceled my meeting, called my secretary, and told her to hold all calls. I walked back into my office, sat down, and opened my laptop. My immediate, gut-wrenching reply to my dad's text was short, sweet, and surgical. Okay. I didn't add an exclamation point or a period. Just okay. I wanted him to know I received the message and that it was accepted, not debated. My next actions were swift and irreversible. I went through my banking and financial apps with the cold, precise efficiency of a sniper. The first thing I did was access the portal for their mortgage provider and cancel the recurring automatic payment I had set up. That was the biggest one. The payment was due in 5 days, and without it, they would be hit with a late fee, and the clock on foreclosure would officially start ticking. Next, I went to the utility accounts, electricity, gas, and water, and removed myself as the payer, reverting the billing and responsibility solely to their names. I didn't pay the current outstanding balances. I just stopped future payments. Then I canceled the transfers for their car notes, which were due the following day. Finally, I logged into my account, found the recurring monthly allowance transfer, the one for their dated cash, and deleted it entirely. I went even further and accessed the golf club's website, found the recurring annual membership fee, which was also linked to my card, and called the club manager to explain the situation and have my payment information removed entirely, effective immediately. I told him the membership would need to be paid by the account holders from now on. In less than 45 minutes, I had systematically dismantled their entire financial scaffolding. Every single dollar I was supporting them with, from the roof over their heads to the greens fees for their weekend recreation, was gone. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of terror and exhilarating freedom. The terror was realizing I had just torched my last bridge with my parents. The freedom was realizing I no longer had to pay for the materials used to build that bridge. I then sent one final, comprehensive email to the email address my dad uses, CCing my mom. I didn't send it to their lawyers because, frankly, I didn't believe they had one, and I certainly wasn't going to hire one. The email was strictly professional and concise. I stated that in light of their decision to formally sever our relationship, a decision which I had confirmed with my reply, I was obligated to view my financial arrangements with them as null and void. I listed every automatic payment I had canceled, detailing the due dates. I finished the email with a single, clear sentence. As per your instruction, I consider this matter concluded. Please direct all future correspondence regarding this matter to your legal counsel. Then I blocked both of their numbers. All calls, all texts, all communication gone. I deleted their contact information and deleted the email from my sent box. I didn't want any reminders. I spent the rest of the day in a numb state, working, but with the knowledge that a financial bomb was ticking. The first 24 hours were silent. I assumed they were still in their smug, celebratory state, thinking I was just stewing and would eventually call them back, weeping and begging to turn the payments back on. They probably convinced themselves that a day of silence meant I was preparing a groveling apology and a promise to double their money. That's how little they understood me. The realization of what I had actually done, the true, devastating impact of my actions, likely began to sink in on Wednesday morning when the car payments I usually covered bounced, and the credit union started calling them directly. That would have been the first crack in their illusion. Then, the golf club manager, likely following up on my call, would have informed them their membership was suspended until payment was received. The utilities would have started sending aggressive shut-off notices. It was exactly 48 hours later, almost to the minute, that the phone started ringing. Since I had blocked their numbers, the call came from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but curiosity, and maybe a little morbid justice, got the better of me. I let it go to voicemail. The message that was left was exactly what I knew was coming, but the sheer panic in her voice was still shocking. It was my mom. She was hyperventilating, her voice cracking, utterly stripped of her usual composed, demanding tone. It's your mother. You have to call me back right now. What have you done? The bank is calling, the car payment bounced, and the mortgage is late. They said they're going to shut off power. Your father is furious. He said he never meant that. It was a mistake. You have to fix this immediately. Please call me back. We need the money. We need the money now, please. I don't know what to do. The message ended with a choked sob. The panic was real, absolute, and overwhelming. She wasn't calling to apologize. She was calling to issue a command under distress, to get her ATM working again. The only difference was that this time, the ATM had been voluntarily unplugged by the user. I listened to the voicemail once, a grim, satisfied feeling settling in my stomach, and then I deleted it. I did not call back. I did not text back. I did not reply to any frantic emails my mom began sending me from different accounts, each one more desperate and less coherent than the last. I simply allowed the consequences of my father's brutally cold text message to play out exactly as they should. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect when two financially illiterate, entitled people suddenly have their entire safety net ripped out from under them. Within a week, my aunt, the one whose daughter was going to art school, called me. She was shocked and worried. She said my parents had been calling her constantly, demanding money, asking for a temporary loan, to cover their unexpected financial emergency. My aunt, bless her heart, had seen through their performance for years and told them she couldn't afford to help, gently suggesting they finally downsize and manage their spending. She told me my mom had been crying on the phone, saying they were going to lose the house. I simply confirmed to my aunt that I was no longer financially supporting them, and I explained the situation with my dad's text. My aunt was horrified by their behavior, but completely understood and supported my decision. She said, "It's tragic, but they needed this wake-up call decades ago. You can't let them destroy your life too." Her validation meant the world to me. The final, absolute consequence came 2 months after the initial text. They had to sell the house. They couldn't scrape together the funds to stop the foreclosure process, and the stress of living without the security of my money, coupled with the humiliation of facing their own debt, finally broke them. They moved into a small, rented apartment, a fraction of the size of their former mansion. My dad took a part-time consulting job, a huge step down from his former executive status, and my mom started taking on small, low-paying design gigs just to cover their basic expenses. They had been forced to live within their actual means, a concept completely foreign to them. I have not spoken to either of them since. I unblocked my aunt and cousin, and we've maintained a great relationship, but I keep my distance from my parents. Their lawyer never called me. Of course, they never had a lawyer. It was all a pathetic bluff, an empty threat meant to coerce me back into my role as their piggy bank. The irony is, by trying to disown, me to gain more power. They actually granted me the one thing I couldn't grant myself: permission to walk away. They officially ended the relationship, thus officially ending the obligation. Looking back, the emotional trauma of that moment was replaced by the overwhelming relief of financial freedom. I'm now paying off my student loans at an incredible pace. I've started a substantial retirement fund, and I'm actually looking at houses for myself. My life is finally my own, unburdened by the weight of their irresponsibility and entitlement. The most important lesson I learned is that sometimes walking away from toxic family is not a sign of weakness or selfishness, but the ultimate act of self-preservation. When people show you who they are, especially when they do it in a cold, brutal text message, believe them and act accordingly. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Financial support, no matter how substantial, should never be a substitute for love, respect, or gratitude. When it becomes a tool of control and manipulation, you have to choose yourself. Like this video, if you were on my side and think I was right to protect myself and my future. Subscribe for more stories like this, where the entitled get a harsh dose of reality. And please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Do you think they learned their lesson, or are they still blaming me for their failures? I'll see you all in the next story.